everybody, and welcome to a brand new episode of Get Thee Behind Me, the very timely and very interesting pod/video series where we take apart the absolute batshit insanity that is the Left Behind books. I remain to be Pastor Don, despite all efforts to the contrary, and I'm joined by the wonderful panel of experts who have come to join me. Down below me, assuming that this all winds up in the same position during recording, I have Courtney and Scott. Say hi, Courtney and Scott.
Oh, hello.
Hi, I'm over here.
And this is Scott Surrogate, as he does not wish to be on camera right now.
And then bottom left in Doggo Central, we have Kay and Finn.
Hello.
Hello.
And Associated Doggo.
Yes.
And then to my left, we have the wonderful, the magnificent, the also going to help beat us up with theology, Micah.
Micah.
Hey, y'all.
Micah with the deep cuts.
All right. If you want the deeper introductions to who everybody is, I would invite you to go back to either episode 1 for most of the rest of us or the previous episode for Micah. I'm not going to spend too much time on the admin of the show today because this is where chapter 3 is what we're getting started on today. And this is where the psychopathy goes on full display. So we start to see just how truly, ethically, morally fucked up our heroes are. This is our real first grasp of this. So I really want to dig into this a little bit. So we're going to dig into this, and a point I'm going to keep coming back to, so I'm going to make this as clear as possible, is that we are having everything that's happening here is in the middle of an actual apocalypse. Like, not like a natural disaster, not even something as big as like the March 11th disaster here in Japan. We're talking a world-changing, life-altering apocalypse, even bigger than that weird shit that happened a couple chapters ago with the nuclear weapons in Israel and Russia's no longer a thing and whatever that was. This is massive. So the way people are behaving is going to be weird. It's going to be different, or at least you'd expect it to be, but it's not. So we're going to be looking at that as a side note, and I think it's important to reiterate this point every time we have an opportunity to do so, is, look, the concept of a literal rapture apocalypse is not part of standard Christian theology. It's not a Christian belief. Like, we don't have it. It's evolved from people who have Christian beliefs that have gone off in different directions with their faith lives, to put it gently. But I see Micah just kind of flexing up over there, getting ready to beat us over the head with theology. And
it's a pretty big book you got there, Micah.
I say that like I'm surprised, but I knew they were going to want to beat us over the head with this one. So I'm going to toss the floor over there for just a minute and let them say their piece, because we really do need to reiterate this point from time to time about how this isn't a thing for Christians. Take it away, Micah. What do you got for us?
Yeah, so the idea of the rapture is something that is really interesting because it is purely an act of fan fiction. It doesn't actually occur anywhere in the Bible. There is no word that can be related to rapture that's present throughout the scriptures. Now, what Schofield does, this con man who is trying to sell a book to convince you that you had to belong to his particular cult, says is that in 1 Thessalonians 4:17, he reads this verse that says, "Those who are alive and remain unto the coming Perusa of the Lord shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air." Now, this phrase, caught up together, it actually is harpazo in the Greek. And harpazo is a word that means caught up, but it doesn't mean stripped away. It doesn't mean taken without the rest of their clothing. It means more caught up in the sense of
such a weirdly specific thing, and you hear it a lot.
Exactly. It's more like they're caught up.
Coming. It means coming, right?
Yeah, it means coming. Exactly. No, it's it actually literally there is. I'll get to that in a minute. So caught up means like moving with the clouds, right? Or moving with the crowd. The same word harpazo is used a couple of different times in the scriptures to say that the crowd, that they were all caught up with the crowd, and they went and demanded that Jesus be the one sacrificed rather than Jesus Barabbas, right? And so that same word there, harpazo, is being used in both contexts. Now, we don't think that people who are in the crowd chanting that Jesus ought to be killed are being caught up and brought up to heaven, right? We don't think that that's happening. And in the context here, no one has ever thought this until one wackadoodle called Schofield believed that in the ancient context. Now, that's just looking at Strong's dictionary, which is reinforced by the word study of the New Testament, that then we can look at the Bible dictionary. And we look at the Bible dictionary, and you know what isn't in there at all? Rapture, because it doesn't occur in the Bible. And then we look at the Greek and we see that harpazo is there. Well, what does that actually possibly mean? Well, let's go and look at the NRSV. And the NRSV says caught up in the clouds, not magically disappeared whenever anyone wanted them to. It says caught up in the clouds, like caught up in a crowd. And then we look at the CEB and we say, oh, what could that possibly be saying? Well, again, it is, and they were caught up in the cloud. It is not saying that they are disappearing. It is saying that in this moment, we're going to be so celebratory of the renewed life of all of these things that we are going to be caught up with the people who have been totally redeemed, and we are going to be celebrating, not terrified of the apocalypse that's coming. We're not going to be abandoning people behind. It's going to be a freaking party, not the end of the world. Now, the thing that
Well,
I
we're
like
going to get to explore the Revelation for what it's actually worth during this, aren't we? Thank
Yes,
you.
exactly. So now what I love about being able to read the Bible in a couple of different versions is that I also have the Gallic New Testament here, the Scots Gallic New Testament, and with the translation they have, it's Tugar suas shin male rishin ounds na nail and Koljol and Kjertnak ounds and arder. And I'm probably mispronouncing half of those words. So if you are a Gallic speaker, shush me. But that phrase togar suas, it is caught up, but it also means to gather together. It means it's literally a word that that when you say togar rishun, it means that they are going out together, that they're dating each other, right? And so it is that relationship that is being caught up there, and it translates so much better into Gallic because it isn't this we're being taken up, we're disappearing. There's no way that you could possibly understand that phrase as we are disappearing. Instead, it is we are gathered together because we are in communion with each other, which has nothing to do with the apocalypse that Left Behind is based off of.
And this is a side note that I think is always worth exploring when we talk about how the Bible's been translated, is when you look to, I'm going to say, more modern languages that are away from the, I'm going to say, garbage fire that is American English, you start to see more of the roots about how this has been translated. Like, look at most German Bibles that were produced before America really came onto the scene. You find the word homosexual doesn't show up anywhere in the book. Like, all of this stuff wasn't actually in the friggin' book. And Americans in particular, particularly post-Schofield Americans, have been terrible about writing their own prejudices and bullshit into the book. And we cannot deny that strongly enough. And
is it possible to write an interpretation, a translation, without incorporating society's prejudices into it?
Not entirely, but being aware of them is important.
Jeez, big dick bibliography over here.
I'm gonna just sit like this.
Shout out to ERB, by the way.
I just want to back up a step. So what you're telling me right now is that Rayford Steele isn't really mentioned in the Bible? Is that
never once?
We got into theology.
Rayford Steele.
Although I'm pretty sure.
I like getting into the theology. I want to know.
Hang on. I do have to say, in the interests of full disclosure, I'm pretty sure that a fully loaded 747 does show up in the Song of Solomon a couple times.
Yes, the fully loaded.
That's a deep cut for those of y'all who know your Bible.
God's banner is over us.
Yeah. All right. So chapter 3. Chapter 3. It's time for fan meet shit. It's time to get started. All right. So we are opening up with Hattie Durham and what was left of her cabin crew encouraged passengers to study safety cards in their seat pocket. Because we're sticking with procedure. And we've debated this in the last episode. So if you want to see how that fell down, you can go there. We got Buck giving Hattie his cell number. and her being so impressed that he's with Global Weekly. Oh, a little bit of hero worship to the great reporter. Fun side note, you will see this happen a lot in this book about how every character seems to fetishize writers in a very, very interesting way. I wonder why that might be.
It happens.
Yeah. I mean, writers,
Hey,
reporters in particular.
As someone fucking a writer, I think you should probably get involved over here.
So
He's commenting on the fetishization of writers throughout this series.
hey,
I mean, I don't blame him.
pastors ain't not but professional writers. We're on board with this. We get it. So let's roll forward. And I know this is the moment you've all been waiting for. This is literally like the climax of the first part of the book. This is
Climax.
and this is the moment in which Buck Williams utterly fails to use an emergency slide like a human being. I don't know why the hell they were like this, but it's freaking hilarious.
Maybe they wanted to throw a funny thing in here or there. It is funny. I mean, and it results in a convenient plot device that we can use later for information.
Right.
They
Well,
tried to
we-
make
we
this
have
funny
to-
this entire
Oh,
time.
hold on.
We have to remember the fact that this book is written as a conservative Christian screed against everything that they hate in the 90s, right? And so what do they hate in the 90s? They hate women that would want to actually pursue a man, right? And so she is made fun of, and the man that she is pursuing then fails to get down the slide. He's not a real man because he wasn't there. So he's a reporter. He's not a real man. He's someone who critiques the evangelical church. And so he's not a real man, right? All of these things are playing into toxic masculinity and saying, oh, he can't do these things. He just got this hot girl's number and then looked like an idiot, right? When he fell down the thing, which is great 90s humor, except that it is targeted specifically to make their enemies look like buffoons.
Yeah.
Okay, counterpoint.
in a book
As a
where they
reporter, I
constantly
will
look like
say.
buffoons.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. I'm sorry.
Oh,
Scott
Go
is
ahead,
an-
go ahead, Scott.
No,
in a book where they
counterpoint.
constantly
As
look
a
like
reporter, I would fall down that slide myself. That's true to life. That would have happened.
Yeah, I think that's a good point for us to be on, is that like the social commentary of this is important. And I'm going to go ahead and spoil some future plot points here for everybody because I've read ahead when I was a teenager. Buck here is the one who takes a long time to quote unquote come to Christ in the process of this. Like this, he doesn't immediately convert like Rayford does. He takes his time with it, really wrestles with it because he's the enemy, the educated, the reporter who critiques. So you're absolutely right about that. On the flip side, and this is going to be the actual spoiler point for you, is the character of Hattie continues throughout the story. Like she's not just a one-off for this plane flight. She comes in and she gets known by another
sneaks
name
around.
that is drawn directly from the book of Revelation, where she is known as the Whore of Babylon.
Yep.
So, yep, she will
Yeah.
come back. She's literally meant to be the archetypical whore in here, which, like, oh my God, introducing the Whore of Babylon as woman who demonstrates a minor degree of agency is so on brand for evangelicalism that it hurts.
The idea that they couldn't.
Screams in woman.
The idea that they couldn't imagine a more outrageous whore of Babylon, I think, says a lot too.
Right.
Then this woman. who
That's the
flirted a
best
little
they
bit
can
with
come
her
up with.
interested coworker.
Like that, they didn't even go to.
We're gonna need to put a counter for how many times I flip off this fucking story.
Oh my God. Anyway,
So, I mean, the worst part about that interpretation of the Whore of Babylon is that the Whore of Babylon is not the whore of Babylon. It is the whore that is Babylon.
right.
It is pointing out that Babylon itself is the person who sells itself out for money, right? And that Babylon, we know if we bother reading the fucking book, then then we know that Babylon is clearly Rome, right? Rome, the city of power, the center of power. Well, where would that be in the modern world? It would be New York. It would be Washington. It would be Miami, right? It would be these centers of power that allow people to be here. And instead of pointing out that the systems of power that exist within the world that can be taken over by conservatives and all these sorts of things are evil, instead they pin it on some broad, right?
Yep, that's
You
it.
killed my husband again. You two have to.
Mhm.
You wreck him with
So
your literary slams.
I want to take this opportunity. I want to take this opportunity to talk about just quickly mention 3 books that everyone should be reading, just so you understand how bullshit this book is. So first off, we have Eugene Peterson's Reversed Thunder. It is an excellent book that goes through by the chapters and looks at the ways that things build together. And then we have Michael Gorman's Reading Revelation Responsibly. Michael Gorman is an expert in this field. He writes a bunch of different books, but Revelation is great because it is specifically targeting the ways that it has been misread throughout history, and he has a whole section on civil religion and the Whore of Babylon and all those sorts of things. And then the theology of the Book of Revelation by Richard Bachman. Those are all great resources that are not very difficult to get into, that everyone can read to understand what's actually going on in the Revelation and to see some of the many good interpretations of Revelation rather than this bullshit.
Hang on. Was the author?
Wait, isn't that Stephen King?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Isn't that Stephen King, Richard Bachman?
He also wrote a book about a plane that suddenly people disappear from as well.
Yeah. Fun fact.
Richard Bachman is Stephen King?
Yeah, I mean, it might not be the same
Different
Richard
one.
Bachman, but Stephen King wrote under the pen name Richard Bachman for a long while.
Well, Richard Bachman is a biblical theologian and scholar of the New Testament.
I assumed it wasn't the same person, but there's just this now mental canon in my head where Stephen King is moonlighting as a Revelation scholar. And I love it. Suddenly the
It's really
Langoliers
nice.
became canon.
I would not be surprised.
All right, so moving on a little bit, we've had our fun at Buck's expense, and now we're going on to this exchange between Rayford and Christopher, his first officer, where he basically just shits on his first officer for taking a ride back to the terminal through, again, what I have to say is painted as the most ridiculous apocalypse ever. Planes on fire, everybody's on the tarmac hurt, people are dying, and they're arguing about what an inconvenience it all is to them as white men. Any thoughts on this? Finn and Kay, I haven't heard a whole lot from you guys
I
yet.
think you've summed it up fairly
Before I
well.
tag in Micah on this one, I want to get some comments from Finn and Kay on this one, because the presumptuousness of it all, I'm sure you guys have words.
Won't someone think of the white man?
We actually didn't talk over this part as much as we did the part once they're in the airport and CNN is airing just pallbearers dropping coffins full of dead naked bodies onto the ground. And
Yeah, I did the one thing that kind of stood out to me was first of all, just Rayford giving Christopher, the co-pilot, so much shit about just taking a fucking ride. I feel like most people in that position, if offered a ride, would accept it. And I don't understand how that's it's almost painted as this inherently immoral thing. And then he also, though, does not feel the same way about Hattie. And she is the one who
She's a
insists
weak woman.
on walking with him. Yeah. And she even goes out of her way she has to point out that he needs to think of her as a member of his crew, which I think is another one of those times where the authors kind of accidentally said the quiet part out loud.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's worth noting here that what's happening is, and what is, First Officer Christopher's sin here is he's effectively demasculinizing his role as leader of the plane. He's like, fuck that. I don't need to take this great responsibility for my, because I am the pilot, setting aside for the fact that it's a fucking airline pilot. You're not any sort of you're not a freaking president or something. You're the fucking pilot of an airplane, man. So he's Christopher's sin here is that he's I'm not big, viral, masculine plane leader. I'm taking a fucking ride to the airport, like the weak women here.
But
Screw
he's
you.
a number 2. He's a beta. He has to be picked up and carried around.
That's it. That's
and his line, I don't get paid enough for this. And then Rayford being all offended on behalf of the airline, which I feel like
Even though the guy flies drunk, like
People have disappeared.
like I haven't quite identified it, but I feel like there's definitely something to be said about the ties between Christianity and capitalism in there, or evangelical Christianity and capitalism.
So many of these things are being drawn here, and like notwithstanding, like we can't dodge the thread of toxic masculinity at the heart of it, but all of these other pieces are definitely here. And like the sanctity of the corporate airline like identity, that is the one that just blows my mind. Like the actual rapture
But
is
without
Jesus came
capitalism,
back
where would we be?
yeah, the
That means
actual
we have
rapture
to be
has
here forever, right?
right. The actual rapture has happened. Jesus has come back to get his people, so we must not harm the sanctity of fucking American Airlines or whatever. Like, unbelievable. And I don't mean that like in I'm shocked. Like this is literally defies my suspension of belief. So we've got that. And what I find interesting is that you've got that demasculinization of Christopher, which makes him bad. And then he turns to Hattie, and Hattie says, oh, after what you just told him, I'm walking. And so you have the masculinization of Hattie. They're both defying their expected roles. The expectation in this situation was that Hattie will take the ride and that Christopher will walk like a man.
So wait, do they think that Hattie walking back to the terminal instead of taking a ride is like a radical feminist act?
Kinda. At least that's the impression I take from it. Like, so,
No, it's a ride.
Like, I have a vagina and I'm going to walk. Like,
at the
that's
same
pretty-
I
time.
don't have the patience for
I
people.
can't relate.
Because look at right there. Are you kidding? If you're walking, I'm walking. Oh, you don't need to do that. Like, right there. It's right there. So they do that and they get going, and and again, I really have to stress this. They shielded their ears from flights screaming into land. Rayford had tried to calculate how long it would be before this runway was shut down true. And again, we've got fire, we've got injured people, and at no point does it occur to Rayford to stop and help anyone. Like, this is the hero of the Christian peace being in.
No, they just sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say no, just instead of like him offering to help people, they just talk about how much of a hero he is for not accepting the many rides offered to him along the walk.
It's true.
That's what a true hero is. Someone who's willing to walk through all of the injured people rather than driving around them.
Man.
Like, that is how we say hero in the American suburbs, let me tell you.
Man, I'm just surprised. Like, there has to be so many button-ups that he could wear just laying around that he's not taking. Why wasn't that not his first reaction? They're focusing on the ride, but there's so many pairs of pants around.
A lot of belts.
Yeah, without.
Okay, now you're getting goofy with looting the bodies.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's okay.
Okay, but while we're on the
Gotta get those
logistics,
All right,
questions.
hold up. Too many people talking. Okay, what do you got to say?
I was gonna say, while we're on the logistics of this, the one real big thing I want answered is because people in coffins are disappearing, what does that mean for organ donors? And what if someone had a heart transplant and they have a Jesus heart in there instead of whatever was there?
Does the organ
Oh my
here?
god.
Like, that's a whole aspect of this that goes wildly uninterrogated here, and I would love to know more about that myself. Like, if an evangelical Christian
It just
died,
seems like there are
donated their organs,
ramifications to corpses.
like, I'm just imagining an unrepentant sinner heart transplant patient, just somebody falling over dead in the middle of his boardroom or something because he got his heart from an evangelical Christian. Like,
or the other way around. If someone is a good Christian
oh God.
and they received a heart from someone who wasn't, they disappear with the heart.
Just a
like,
soft plot.
You've also killed my husband.
That would not be a shirt I would steal.
That's the line that should be in this book right here. A soft plop.
a soft flop of a heart falling onto the ground without its
I
body.
want more of this. Like, if they had thought critically about the apocalypse they were laying out even a little bit, there's so much more creativity that could be explored. But this is the theme that keeps not being explored here is if you start thinking about this a little bit, shit gets weird quick.
Can I ask you guys a question?
Sure.
Raise your hands if you personally would have taken a ride. What a bunch of betas we all are.
Exactly.
Like,
Look,
if there
I
was
gotta
a
be
pregnant
honest.
lady or something.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I gotta
Seem
be
not
honest.
like
In
a
that,
Okay,
in that scenario, first off, I'm not a fucking airline pilot, so I wouldn't have had that baggage over my head anyway. But like, I'm sorry, in the case of an actual apocalypse, I'd be like, okay, I gotta get to the wife and kids. Like, that's first priority. Like,
Right.
there are emergency responders here to deal with some of this shit. Like, because I mean, we're not looking at a situation here where all the emergency responders are acting like normal humans and also freaking out about the possible lack of their families. They're all here doing their job. Like, and I am not a trained medical professional. I'm the fuck out to go find out if my family's okay. Like, if there were no medical first responders or something on the scene, the calculus is different. But in the apocalypse they've painted here, like, there are first responders, there are airport personnel, they're all doing their jobs for some fucking reason. So yeah, I'm getting on that thing and I'm getting the hell out. I got other business to tend to. They're taken care of by people smarter and better than me.
yeah, I think one of the things I said to Kay when we were reading this too, and I guess this is also like a very like niche thing that's just specific to me, but like as a wheelchair user, I am an ambulatory wheelchair user, so I can walk, but I could not walk like that distance. And just the fact that they like are they just because they talk about how anyone who like can't walk back to the terminal should just wait on the plane, and then the pilot gets off, the whole crew gets off, so are they just leaving all of the like disabled and elderly people just like sitting on the plane? And then my one other thing is there's already like a big conversation within like the disabled community about like flying with like a wheelchair and stuff, because basically what they do is they put it like in the cargo hold, or like it's basically treated like luggage, damaged all the time and stuff. But like there's already enough like issues in a normal functioning society with people like getting their wheelchairs back when they arrive, because sometimes if there's too much luggage it gets put on another flight or something. And like, so I'm just wondering then if there's like also disabled people that not only are just stuck waiting on the plane to be helped back to the airport, but then like just never get like their necessary mobility devices back.
Well, let me go ahead and answer this question for you. I don't think they ever say it explicitly, but after about 6 chapters of this, you'll start to realize there are no disabled people anywhere in this series at all. Nobody
so
has
we're
any
all just like
disability.
we're all just the innocents, like the children.
No, I'm pretty sure that they just
They
left
all
all
got
y'all on
raptured.
planes at the beginning and you all died because no one came back for you.
They just
the
left you
evangelical
to starve
fantasy.
on the plane.
Yeah, this is what we call soft eugenics.
Or we starved in our houses because we didn't have anyone coming to help us.
Welcome to the evangelical fairy tale, y'all. Like we talk about an apocalypse of an evangelical design. Like there's so much more death and destruction happening here than is even written about. And Finn, you point that out well with what the hell happens to all the disabled people. Simple. The evangelicals didn't think shit about them, so they all died.
They didn't think about that because
Yep.
why?
Again,
Okay,
a counterpoint.
I'm gonna have to raise this question. It's a bit of a meta question, I know. But did you go off camera just to change your lipstick?
No, I
What?
had,
Not
I had to go to the bathroom and I was like, oh, my lips are dry, but this is really good moisturizing stuff. So
Okay, because it's purple and I love it. Anyway, moving on. So we get to the terminal now. So we've gone through all of the annoying, sick and injured people who are, going to survive if they're not disabled, and if they are disabled, are probably going to die because that's how evangelicals seem to work. And so now we get to the terminal. We get to Rayford and everybody trying to contact people. Now, Finn, you had said that you and Kate had a lot to say about this sequence here once we get into the terminal. Anything you want to bring up?
You said that.
Yeah, I mean, really, honestly, this is where I started wondering about the organs. Like, took me down that bunny trail.
Because this might have been where they started mentioning that corpses
Yeah.
disappeared.
Yeah, and CNN filming like funerals
Babies in the
where
womb too.
yeah, that one.
Like,
That was a fucking trip.
Wait, what?
Babies vanished out of the womb, and
Oh,
then
yeah.
the women had a suddenly flat belly after that.
Yeah, I was also
Yeah.
like, that's
Okay,
that's
look,
kinda how that works.
I gotta go ahead and say this as someone who is married to a woman who has had 4 pregnancies. Let me tell you, it doesn't work like that.
Your
No.
belly's not just automatically flat.
no, it
You-
doesn't.
Yeah,
No,
like,
you'd still effectively
Instant
be pregnant
tone
with a
tummy.
placenta.
and as the cishet male in the equation, let me be the first to say that's not a bad thing. Like, women's bodies are still beautiful. Like, it's not a complaint. I'm not leveling any kind of complaint about it. But the physics of it aren't in any way logical. But the fact that the authors think it is
Human bodies are made
hilarious.
of flesh. That's okay.
Like, and the fact that I should stress, these guys border on fucking quiverful with their belief about the role of women in childbearing and stuff like that. So how the hell do they not know this is a good question. Like, how?
I would bet
It's
money
important
that
she
I
get
would bet
pregnant
money
and
that
that
if
she have
either of
fun
them
doing
had
it.
kids,
No, go ahead, Finn.
do you know if either of the authors had kids?
I don't know, but I assume.
Okay.
I'll Google
Because
this
I was
while
gonna
we
say
keep
I
chatting.
was willing to bet money that if either of them have kids, they were the kinds of dads that weren't in the delivery room with the mothers.
in there.
They probably
Like-
weren't in the delivery
You were
room with
totally
the
in there.
I was all up in.
You were fantastic. I couldn't have done it without you.
Yeah. In fairness,
Mhm.
to go ahead and say it too, I was in the delivery room, even though because my first child was born in Japan, the Japanese nurses were all like, what is he doing here? Is this like domestic violence? Husbands shouldn't be in the delivery room. This is weird.
I didn't realize that culturally that's not
Yeah.
that's
That
like
was,
much
well, we
different
were
there.
admittedly at a very traditional hospital. Like some of the less traditional hospitals are more prepared for that. These guys had no idea what the hell was going on, and it was kind of hilarious in retrospect, but a little worrying at the moment.
I was
Anyway,
gonna say, as a 6-year-old child, I was in the room when my sister was delivered.
I try
No.
to stay as far away from babies as I can. They're here to replace
Whoa!
us.
how
All
many?
right, so since we're we might be editing for length of having someone missing.
Yeah,
here,
sorry.
I have a feeling. No, it's good. This is fantastic. So I have Wikipedia Tim LaHaye. Wow. Wrote more than 85 books, Baptist evangelical. Founder of the Council for National Policy.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which you may
That's the
recognize
kind of
as
guy we're dealing with.
Christian advocacy group. LaHaye strongly opposed homosexuality, believing it to be immoral and unbiblical. He was a harsh critic of Roman Catholicism and a strong believer in conspiracy theories regarding the Illuminati.
Ooh, are the Illuminati?
Oh my god.
I hope so.
Showing off the lesbian.
Yeah. So this guy,
Oh,
we're not going to do a Wikipedia deep dive on the guy today, but let me tell you, this guy's a fucking trip. And
It
again,
might be interesting to do an episode like diving into all that stuff.
yeah, we
instead
should
of
do
just
a
the
very
factors.
special episode just on the authors, but we'll save that for another time. But Courtney, what's your,
except for one thing. I need to lay this in here. The first thing he published in 1978 was titled The Unhappy Gays, which was later retitled What Everyone Should Know About Homosexuality. Fuck this guy.
oh, that is the best title. I did not know
Give
that.
this guy the fucking he doesn't deserve.
Ah,
Oh,
I already
God,
have a
I'm mad
headcanon
now.
that both authors are secretly lovers, so this just further confirms it for me.
Unhappy
yes, let's ship
lovers,
them
that's
because
it.
they'd hate
Alright.
it.
okay, in the interest
Oh
of
my God,
time,
Rayford
let's
X
table
Buck.
this until we do a
Rayford
video
X
about the
Buck
author.
forever.
All right. In the interest of time, we're going to table this until we have time to do an episode about the authors. For now, let's go
Amen.
ahead and move on. We've got all the CNN reports. We've got the miraculously flat bellies, which I got to tell you, that's more of a miracle than anything else I've seen here. Let's see. He's trying to get a hold of people because the answering machine messages. Clearly, his college daughter was not saved. The one who went to
no
college.
way.
Well, she was at college
Exactly.
trying to get
Where they
some
get ya.
learning.
Yeah. Which This was
She was
even when I-
probably experimenting with women.
yeah. That
Mhm.
this, by the way,
That's what
I
you do
gotta-
there.
Possibly at the same time.
I got to say this, as a teenager, this was the first bit that really just concerned me. Like, this was the first one of the first threads that really had me going like, what the fuck is going on here? Because she goes from this very independent character in this book to becoming like a freaking Mennonite housewife with zero agency by the end of the series. Like, she makes that transition to full on quiverful bitch, for lack of a term, from here on through. By the way, for those of you listening on the podcast, Micah had to step out for a minute and is now back to joining us for the continued rant. So let's all take a moment to welcome back Micah. Woo-hoo, yeah, welcome back.
Hey,
Go quietly so we don't wake their child again.
Yes, yes, we don't want to wake any children. Mine are already awake, so I couldn't care less. But we do care about Micah.
Anytime there.
All right, so we have moved on a little bit. We've gotten into the terminal now. We've dealt with the magical disappearing babies and the shall we say, the miracle of the spontaneously flat stomachs.
Or rather, we haven't dealt with the miracle of the babies.
Yeah, because that never gets really dealt with. Like we have dealt with the fact that it's mentioned, but nobody else seems to give a shit about it throughout the rest.
Yeah, so like let's just take this for a minute and think about the fact that like the way that evangelicals think about these things already by the 90s is that they think no other human being cares about babies enough to even think about how they could have disappeared, to even be sad about it. Nobody else in the world even thinks about this. This is how
If we don't defend the children, no one will.
Exactly. This is how inhumane the evangelicals imagine the rest of humanity to be. That children go missing and suddenly, and it's no big deal, right? Just because they think that a tiny clump of cells makes up a human being does not mean that the rest of us don't care when our babies disappear, right? Like everybody would be freaking upset about that.
Yeah, look at the explosion of that point though. Like, oh my God, like
That's right. You lay out like 3 miles worth of careful theological setup and then bitch smack a motherfucker. Like,
this is why I like the guy, man. So that you're right. That's where we're at, is the world in which nobody cares about kids, which again, we all know isn't true, but the assumptions on which this book is built are fucking wild. So
thank you.
by the way, we're going to move on. Rayford's making his various connections. He's trying to, and now we've got, is it still Rayford? Yeah, it is still Rayford trying to arrange like helicopter rides for Fulford, some shit here. And I love this line, by the way. It's not a he, she's a flight attendant. Like just the inherent gender rolling in that just is just, it just makes me chuckle.
Written by the
it's
sort of
only,
person who
sorry.
can't written by the sort of person who can't fathom a male nurse.
Yeah. So let's see. Yeah. Oh God, as we're getting ready to get in the helicopter, the exchange between the fucking pilot and Hattie about weight. Like, yeah. What do you weigh, doll? 115. I can handle the weight. Like this whole exchange about how much she weighs is wildly unnecessary. Like, setting aside that, like, I don't think
she's so tiny, she barely takes up any room, so it's smart to put her on
Even
there.
if she was 200
Tiny,
pounds,
delicate
it
woman.
wouldn't make that much of a difference.
right. Like,
Like-
that's not generally how helicopters work.
Scream
that fast.
enlarged woman.
Like, so all of that's going on here. We got a little bit yet left in the chapter, but we're trying to get her out on a helicopter. And then we get to the exclamation mark of the sentence from like 6 pages ago. Now, what about Chris? They wheeled him past us while I was going into the lounge, blood all over. I don't know, but he didn't look good. I mean, I think he was dead. Like, because he took that ride.
For riding that
got
scooter.
Murdered.
Oh my God.
Like,
Well, don't they go on to trigger warning, say he killed himself?
Oh no.
Mhm.
Yeah.
This book actually for me was how I learned
Because he
that
took a ride.
I was a child when I read this book, and it's how I learned that people slit their wrists to kill themselves. This is a foundational memory for me. I remember having to ask my mom to explain it, and I think he does it with like a credit card or something. It's mentioned at some point.
And even she couldn't answer.
Yeah, I was like, why would that happen? And my mom was just like,
How
the
would that
fuck?
work? You can find something better than a credit card.
Yeah, like the whole thing, like there are multiple occasions where suicide comes up
Looking
in
up,
this book, and
or
it's
rapture.
always treated with a bluntness and a vilification that is terrifying. So yeah, so all that's happening. We spend a solid page on Chris getting his comeuppance. And it's very much treated that way.
Yeah, I found where we're at. It's terrible.
Like, and I say this here for Chris, but
Full screen.
I mentioned this back in the first episode, that what this whole series is it's not futuristic porn, it's voyeuristic porn. Like, this is evangelical Christians it's an evangelical Christian snuff film is basically what it is. We're getting a laugh out of how right we were and how all you all are suffering. That's the perspective here. We've written a fictional environment in which we were all proven right, and now we're going to spend 6 or 7 books laughing about how badly you're getting fucked. Like, that's what the point of this is. So we get this with Chris here, but this will come up every time a non-Christian or non-Christian from their perspective is mentioned, as it's voyeuristic, you got screwed sort of writing.
And then I love that they just very abruptly switch from talking in depth about the suicide to going back to talking about how Hattie is sitting on Rayford's lap, and like how it's such a like weird thing that he is currently not feeling like super turned on by her sitting on his lap, because
he was hard as steel.
She's a sex object. That's what she's for.
Out of how he's not.
You should be turning people on.
Like, I'm sorry, I'm going to raise the biology question. You're sitting in a giant vibrating helicopter with a woman you've been lusting after for months.
Yeah, no, you're getting a boner anyway.
I'm sorry.
The adrenaline alone.
Between the adrenaline, the vibration, and the woman, it's unless there's something
He
wrong.
fucking came like a fire hydrant.
It is the end of the world. I'm gonna say that they might have gotten this one right, but what really disturbs me about the way that they get it right is they say first off, they go into this rant where he's like, would I have killed myself if my family was lost? Well,
I wasn't living for them.
Yes, exactly. He wasn't living for them anyway, which like implies that if you want to have any relationships outside of the one that is strictly within your family, that you're clearly just betraying that family. If you have any friends outside of your family, then you are clearly not living for your family, which is again a way of holding down cults, right? If you have any friends outside of the church, then you are clearly not living for God, right? Which is bullshit, but that's a whole other discussion. And then this line here, she was beautiful and sexy and smart, but only for her age, as if the only reason to be with your wife that you had been with as a child, from a young person, is because they are beautiful and sexy and smart for her age. And that is appropriate to you because you are the same age, not because you have a loving consensual relationship, not because you have the years of relationship that cause you to inform these things and see the inner beauty of the other person. No, it's all because you just happen to be the same age as that person. And it's only appropriate to have those things because of the same age. And this is why Republicans want to marry teenagers, right? This is why all of these laws are being restricted, torn away on child marriage.
You broke Scott again.
While laws on marriage between queer folks are having laws put up, laws against the marriage of children are being torn down, because the only thing in the evangelical conscience that is holding people back from marrying literal children is this idea that's not very strong, that you should only be with a person because they're appropriate for your age, rather than because of the inherent love that you have for that person that should hold you in that relationship. But
as a side note, we have many instances of Republicans marrying 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, shit like that when they're in their 50s. So, they kind of are marrying children already, but that's, that's another thing. So let's, in the interest of time, let's go ahead and keep moving on. We got this last section with our good buddy Buck. So, Rayford gets off the helicopter with Hattie, and he's like, oh, I should probably find a car to get there because it's a mile away. Like, how fucking fat is this man that he can't walk a mile? But he eventually consents to do the long walk home. And then, you know, they go their separate ways, and yada, yada, yada. Now we are on to Buck. He had been the first passenger from his flight to reach the terminal at O'Hare. Like, that's our introduction to where he is now. So, you know, unlike Rayford and Chris and all the others, like, Buck got the fuck over there, which I love the rhyme of that, by the way. And so he is the worst. Like, he got to the terminal first, so he's the worst. First one there is the rotten egg. And so, of course, Buck Williams, being the stand-in right now for the godless, educated heathen here, his first act upon getting to the terminal, unlike godly Rayford, who was to look for his family, his first act is to get to work. Gotta check in with the boss.
Which, like, so far they've made it seem like he doesn't really have much close family. So, I mean, who's to say that his, like, work friends are not his family? Like,
Yeah. And
That's
also,
non-traditional shit, and we don't do that here.
yeah, let's keep in mind the context of the writers here. It's
The
also,
secret being we can label anything non-traditional
yeah,
if we want to.
I vaguely recall, like, and I'm reaching back here from when I read the whole series straight through. I vaguely recall at some point some mention of, like, Buck's father or something, but, like, I don't think his family's ever really explored. I could be wrong about that, and we might find out in future episodes, but that's kind of how I remember it. And so, of course, like, the general email to everybody is just stay where you are. We don't want you guys to get hurt. Like, we're actually being a caring corporation, which is fucking weird in of itself. But then Buck gets the special email that says, spend as much money as you can to get here immediately. We need you in New York. Like, setting aside for a moment the specialness of Buck, like, the assumption that money is the way to make anything happen in this environment is just wild to me. Like, I mean, let me ask a question. Do you guys think governments would continue to be a thing in the apocalypse they're painting here?
Oh, I don't know.
Sort of. I assume they would be much different. But
Well, I mean, if all the Republicans fucking disappeared.
Well, okay, given that point, that maybe the emergency response would be better given the resulting geopolitical situation.
Yeah.
But who would go out with their guns to shoot the rapture?
Micah, you had something there?
I don't know how I can top who will go out to shoot the rapture.
That's the title for this episode right there.
We'll go out to shoot the rapture.
So, well, I mean, the government has to continue to exist to perpetuate the wealth of the very few. But anyway, so there will still be governments. They'll just be clamping down on small regions of power. Now, the thing that really grinds my gears in this section is the fact that, like, we know evangelicals are anti-Semitic, right? We know that evangelicals only support the state of Israel for their own weird conspiracy theories about the end of the world, right? But the Orthodox Jews here, the Orthodox Jewish rabbis that are implied here, who are never called rabbis, it's just a conference of Orthodox Jews that are coming for a meeting, and they are giddy over the destruction of Russia and her allies. Well, Russia and her allies make up a huge percentage of the Jewish population of the world. Something like 10% of Jewish people live in Russia and states that are aligned with Russia, right? And so this is not something that an actual Jewish person would be giddy about, that Russia was destroyed. It is only because they are seeing
My entire extended
Russia as the
family.
evil. Yeah, exactly.
That's
They
also-
are only seeing Russia as the big bad evil guy because they are speaking from an American context, right? It has nothing to do with the Bible and everything to do with the particular politics of the people writing this book.
And
it's
equating
worth
Israel
noting-
with all the Jewish people, which is shitty.
It's worth noting here too that the easiest way to understand this perspective is from the narrative here, is that Buck gets his special private email that I was saying, get to New York as soon as possible, bear no expense, be John Hammond in this shit, get it done. And the reason for that is not we've just had a fucking apocalypse. All the evangelical Christians were right and we need our best reporter on scene. It's no, the Orthodox Jews are doing a thing. And also there's this monetary thing at the United Nations that we've been talking about for weeks. We need someone on those things, not the apocalypse. We need to talk about the Jews. Like that's what the fucking Global Weekly wants him to spend all this money on. Like
and the
Talk about the
one world
Jews.
government. Yeah. And the one world government, or the one world religion that they're supposed to be doing. Now, this is something that basically know-nothings in America have been thinking for a long time. So around the time that Schofield was writing this, there was a political party in the United States called the Know-Nothings. They were anti-immigration. They were anti-treaty, basically, between different countries. And they deeply influenced Schofield's understanding. You can tell it just by reading his book that he knows nothing. All right. And throughout the rest of the scripture, or throughout the rest of their interpretation, they say that the unity of things is clearly a sign of the end, right? That if there is one world religion, or one world currency, that this is clearly something there, right? Well, let's think about what the mark of the beast actually is in the New Testament. The mark of the beast is something that you have, is a face that you have on your hand. Well, what is that? We know that, that just in the lead up to the destruction of the temple, that the Roman authorities demanded that that the Jewish people no longer be allowed to use the Tyrian silver. Tyrian silver coins did not have any sort of demarcation on them, so they weren't idolatrous to Jewish believers. But if they used a coin with someone's face on it that said that they are God, right? That is an idol. And so Jewish people couldn't use it. Well, Nero came in, demanded that they use the coins with his face on it. And so that was the mark of the beast. You are using an idolatrous coin that is being changed here, right? And that becomes the one world government. Well, we just have to look at our own dollar bills to see, oh, is there a face on there? Is there a face on there of someone that I'm supposed to worship, that I'm supposed to think created a divine constitution that's supposed to run my country for the rest of time, right? These are people that we worship because the one world religion that we ought to be afraid of throughout the book of Revelation is not some coming together of Christians and Jews and Muslims and pagans and Shintoists and Buddhists and Hindus and everybody else. It is the civil religion that erases the truth of all of those religions to say instead, your God is subject to the state, and you must worship the God that we have set up for you, the God that says that you have to go to war and murder the innocent people of other countries. You have to oppress the people in other countries so that I can get wealthier, and our economy is determined by how rich the people at the top get, rather than the God who comes along the oppressed to say, no, we are fighting for a world where all people have enough and more than enough, because that is what salvation means, that everyone belongs.
You see, this is why
I would like to subscribe to your newsletter.
Yeah. This is why I like having Micah on board, because I don't have to do these long rants myself anymore. I've got a backup. I love it. Yeah, you're absolutely 1,000% right about this. And in the end, like this whole archetypical one world government terrible thing that they're saying you should be aware of is pretty much what Republicans are building in America. Like they're trying to do the thing they say is the bad thing because they realize it'll actually give them power. So
and the one world government is not anything that's different from what exists now. The one world government is there is one country in the world that imperialistically determines what happens in most of the rest of the world. And you know what that one country is? The United States of America.
Yep.
Even the people that are ostensibly our enemies, Russia and China, deeply depend on our economy, and so we are able to imperialize most of the rest of the world. That's why sanctions work, because we have all the power and the military to go and reinforce those things. The one world government that we ought to be afraid of throughout the book of Revelation is the one that currently exists and is seated in the White House, and the Pentagon, more importantly, not anywhere else.
All right. So that said, we are starting to run low on time. So Courtney, get your last comment in here.
I'm trying to remember it. Oh, like the brief Wikipedia dive that we were doing while Micah was gone.
Yeah.
Like this dude's Tim LaHaye's belief in like the Illuminati and like fear
Yeah.
of a one world socialist state is like very telling. All of a sudden I'm like, oh, now it's all falling into
It all
place.
ties into this weird cultish theology, and it all comes back to what I've been saying about this whole package of beliefs here. It's all cult shit, and it's all stuff that isn't from Christianity. It's from one fucking dude who decided he wanted to do his own thing. So
It's really good to find out, you know?
yeah, like the call in this case is not coming from inside the house. If the call were the Crusades, yeah, that'd be us. If the call were like abuses in the Middle Ages, definitely. If the call is evangelical Christianity and all that shit, nope, that's an outside line. But let's go over and fuck them up anyway because they're doing terrible shit. So
Wires.
yeah, on that point, we have gotten to the end of this chapter, and we're probably a good 10 minutes over time now because Scott spotted I just let it go longer than I should have. So
I mean, to be fair, this chapter was a lot longer than the one before it, so I feel like
yeah, so I feel we have
Yeah,
covered
there's
it
a lot.
appropriately. I noticed that Kay seems to have gotten bored and wandered off, but we will send our love to.
no, she had to step away for a minute. Sorry.
All right. So that being the case, we're going to draw our episode to a close right here with extra special love for Kay, who will be returning to us shortly. In the meantime, for those of you who followed along to the end of this extra long episode, thanks for sticking with us. We do a lot of shit up here in the Unfinished community. You can find links to all of our stuff down below. Discord server if you're not in Japan, actual church if you are. We are doing so much stuff. It is insane. Micah is, of course, the host of The Word in Black and Red. Did I get the colors in the right order this time? Yes, good. Okay, I always do that when I'm talking about that podcast. I pop over there from time to time. By the time this episode comes out, Word in Black and Red should have been out for a little while at that point, because as we're recording, it hasn't been released yet. But I think by the time, because we're 3 months out, I think, on this one, so it should be out by then. So you can check that out at the link that will probably be below, unless I forgot. And other than that, yeah, Courtney, do the thing.
Oh yeah, like, share, subscribe, comment, join the Discord, tell a friend.
Yeah, pass this shit around, y'all, because take a good old puff of that revelation juice and pass it along. That's what we do. Okay,
And
no comments on that.
That's
one.
called foreshadowing to the
Yeah.
7 bowls of Revelation.
Oh God, we're gonna have so much fun with that. All right. Tune in next time for another exciting episode of us making fun of the Left Behind series. We'll see you on the next episode. Have a good one, y'all. Bye.
Bye.
Don't take any easy rides.
Bye.